Good morning. I'm Reverend Elea Kemler, minister of First Parish Church of Groton, Massachusetts.
And I am Lee Kinvey, intern minister. We are so glad you're here.
We are a community seeking to deepen spiritually, to take care of one another, and to be a blessing to this world. Unitarian Universalism is a faith for all. So whoever you are, whatever country you come from, whoever you love, whatever you've done, whatever your abilities, challenges, or gifts, wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome in this virtual at the moment, but very real community. We welcome you to the minister's study this morning. Instead of the minister's living room, Lee and I are fully vaccinated and so grateful to be in the same place at the same time and able to lead worship together safely.
If you are here with us on Sunday morning, then we'd love to say hello to you in the live chat. So write in and tell the other congregants that you are here and who you are. And if anytime you're here, you'd like more information about First Parish, our programs, events, small groups, just email welcome@uugroton.org and we will get you connected. Thank you to those contributing to today's service. Sean McCann, Director of Music Ministries, Mark and Nancy Caruzis, Marissa Benson, our Youth and Young Adults Program Coordinator, Nathaniel Clark, and Leo Espinosa.
The sanctuary we create together during this time is real. We hope that you will come inside and rest for a while and receive hope and strength. So, as has become our tradition, I will ring the meditation bell and invite you to take 3 long, slow, deep breaths. Consider each breath and each ring of the bell an invitation to become a little bit quieter in yourself, a little bit more fully present in this moment. So the first breath is for yourself. The second breath is for all of the ones you love. And the third breath is for the world. So Marissa Benson has our words for chalice lighting this morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marissa Benson, and I'm going to light the chalice this morning. It was January 2015 when I began an internship at First Parish Church of Groton, working with our youth. I had decided to take the semester off from college after my dad had died in July 2014. It felt important to be at home and to be with my family. Liz helped me vision and create a way for me to offer my gifts and learn new skills. This internship was the first major step in my unintentional becoming. Little did I know I had begun a series of unexpected unfoldings. A door had opened towards a path I had not known existed. It was in the spring of 2017 when I took my second step in the same direction. I was about to graduate college when all my original plans, Peace Corps, internships, jobs, had melted away. Liz shared with me an amazing resource, the UU College of Social Justice, which is an organization that offers internships justice-oriented for UU young adults. That summer, the Sanctuaries, an organization centered around arts activism in Washington, D.C., was accepting interns. I was thrilled and inspired when I got the position and spent the summer in that city doing work that I loved. As my internship neared its close, I looked around for meaningful jobs. In my search, I stumbled upon a youth program coordinator position in Fort Collins, Colorado, at a UU church. I thought back to the internship I had done with you all and decided to apply. Unfortunately, I was not offered the position, but when Liz heard, she began a dialogue with me about creating a similar position here at First Parish. And like that, I started as your youth coordinator in September 2017, collaborating with Liz and nurturing our youth. Still, part of me had resisted coming back to Groton. I had dreamed of being elsewhere, Fiji, Lesotho, Morocco. I applied for jobs elsewhere in hopes that they would align, and yet none of them came through. Knowing I needed to spread my wings, I planned a trip to Israel and took off for a month in January 2018. When I returned in February, I felt rejuvenated and inspired. Liz and I sank back in, and that spring, Caitlin Kramer and John Fry jumped on board, and together we hosted our first ever soulful service. By the end of the church season in June, I felt inspired, engaged, and ready for more. I talked with Liz and Elea and signed on happily to begin again in the fall. That summer, I had visions of doing peace building and conflict resolution work, but life had other plans, as usual. My mother told me about the Omega Institute, a holistic retreat center in Rhinebeck, New York, that hosts workshops, but also has a vibrant seasonal community. I decided to go and was fully mesmerized by the magic of the land, people, growth, and connections that were cultivated there. I met some of my favorite people on the planet, one of which is my partner, Colin. As September neared, I was torn. One part of me was dying to stay in this wonderland, as Omega's season doesn't end until October. And yet, I felt my heart pulled here to this community. I felt so lucky to know that I was doing work I loved, that I was creating, hosting, and sharing what truly fed me. The following months were full of youth groups, coming of age, owl programs, and leading worship. I felt so full of joy and gratitude that I could be paid to do work that inspired me. I started to receive compliments, nudges, and questions about my path. Have you ever thought about ministry? You really seem to be a natural at this. It's so good to have your gifts shared here. Do you want to be a minister? At first I laughed. Minister? Psh, no. But somewhere in my mind I wondered if perhaps you all were onto something. As another church year neared its end, I laughed at how different my last 2 years had been, and yet how fulfilled I felt. And yet, at the same time, I knew I needed to expand. I knew I wanted to start another chapter and that my time in Groton was coming to a close. I bowed in gratitude, and with a bittersweet goodbye, I set off for another summer at Omega. While there, my partner, Colin, and I planned our move out west. We decided on Oregon, and we moved there December 2019. Flash forward, March 2020, global pandemic. The silver lining, the community I love, you all, went virtual. In co-creation with Liz, I suddenly got to be your youth and young adult programs coordinator. Starting in September 2020, and now, as another unexpected year comes to a close, I can't help but bow with the utmost gratitude. I have been so lucky to unintentionally become my most beautiful, vibrant self with you all. I feel deeply touched by all the gifts I have been able to give and receive here over the years. I had no idea what was possible. You have been the holding space, the resting place, the warm house, the sweet song, the moonlit walk, the sunset, the going home, the finding my way. Thank you, thank you, thank you for holding me in all my unintentional becoming. So I'm going to light the chalice in that gratitude for that unintentional becoming. Here you are.
Thank you, Marissa.
So now let's sing together Spirit of Life by Carolyn McDade. We sing it first in Spanish, translated by Lilia Cuervo and Reverend Barrios, and then in English. Nancy and Mark Carusis are going to lead the singing today.
Fuente de amor, ven hacia mí, ya corazón, cántale tu compasión, sopla a volar, sube a la mar, hasta mover la justicia de la vida. Llágame, libérame, fuente de amor, ven a mí, ven a mí. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Root hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
So sweet. Thank you. Now, I would like to talk to our children for a bit. And first, we're going to say the words for gathering together. Say them with me, and we'll do the hand motions. We are Unitarian Universalists with minds that think, hearts that love, and hands ready to help. Today, we are talking about change that we didn't really expect or plan. Our story is called Our Subway Baby, the true story of how one baby found his home. It was written by Peter Mercurio, told to his son, Kevin. Peter and his husband, Danny, did not expect to become parents. The artwork is by Leo Espinosa. That's the sign for the New York City subway. Some babies are born into their families. Some are adopted. This is a story of how one baby found his family in the New York City subway. That's the train underground. It was a cool August night in New York, and Danny was riding the subway home. That's Danny right there. On his way out of the station, he saw something tucked away in the corner. At first, it looked like a doll, but it wasn't. It was you. You were only a few hours old, wrapped up in a sweatshirt. Danny brushed your cheek, and you wiggled your arms and legs. For a moment, time stopped. But then Danny jumped into action. He called the police, and then he called me. So there's the baby and Danny. That is Peter. Peter's running. "I found a baby!" he cried. "Get here quick!" I could practically hear Danny's heart beating through the phone. So, of course, I ran. You were in a police officer's arms the first time I saw you. You looked like an angel, and Danny and I could not take our eyes off of you. The officer gently put you in the police car, and you yawned, as if this sort of thing happened every day. We waved goodbye, hoping we would see you again someday soon. A reporter picked up the story, and soon all of New York City wanted to know more about Danny and the baby from the subway. You made headlines in all the newspapers and on TV. We didn't know at the time, but Danny had not just found a baby, he had found our family. Danny could not stop thinking about you, so the next morning he went to the hospital. But they wouldn't let him see you. Only family may visit, said the front desk person. I'm the person who found him, Danny said. He doesn't have a family. I just want to make sure he's okay. Thanks to you, he's a healthy little boy, the lady said. Who knows what would have happened if you hadn't found him? The nurses named him after you and the subway train. Danny Ace Doe. So Danny and I had to go on with our lives. And even though we had known you only for a few minutes, we missed you. We wondered about you often. We learned that you were placed in a foster home. Some babies stay in foster care for a short time, and some for a long time. Some live in many different foster homes, and they grow up without a permanent home or family. Judge Cooper, the woman in charge of finding loving homes for many New York City children, did not want that to happen to you. Luckily, she knew how you and Danny had found each other. She had heard about his visit to see you at the hospital. She had seen him talk about you on TV. And so, she knew exactly where you belonged. But first she wanted to meet Danny. In December, Judge Cooper called Danny to her courtroom. You care a lot about this little boy, don't you? She asked. Danny nodded. A baby belongs with someone who loves him, and I think that's you. Would you like to adopt him? Danny took a deep breath. In that moment, he knew adopting you was exactly what he wanted. Yes, I am interested, he said, but I know adopting a baby isn't always easy for two dads. It can be, the judge smiled. Where there is love, anything is possible. Danny was speechless. All he could do was nod again. He left the courtroom, excited about us starting a family together. It's funny to think about it now, but I wasn't so sure at first. That's incredible, I said to Danny, but it's impossible. Where there is love, anything is possible, Danny said. Fate is giving us a son. How can we refuse? But I was scared. After all, our apartment was tiny. Our piggy banks were empty. I didn't know if we had what it took to be your parents. A few days later, we went to your foster home to visit you and to see if we were ready to be your parents. Danny cradled you first, and then he placed you in my arms. Your turn, he told me. He looks scared, doesn't he? As soon as he put you in my arms, you started to cry. I mean, you wailed. Then something strange happened. "It's okay," I whispered, and I brushed your cheek. "It's gonna be okay." And suddenly you stopped crying, and you just stared at us with these big, wide eyes. And then you wrapped your tiny little hand around my finger, and you squeezed and squeezed. The harder you squeezed, the more I forgot my worries. Our home may have been tiny, our piggy banks may have been empty, but our hearts were full. That's how we knew we were meant to become a family. We chose to name you Kevin in honor of a family member who was very special to us. And our names changed too. We became your Daddy Danny and your Papa Pete. The miracles didn't stop there, though. We thought we'd have to wait months and months to actually bring you home. But Judge Cooper asked if we'd like to bring you home for Christmas. For Christmas? That was in 3 days. We didn't have anything for you yet. But of course we said yes. Where there is love, anything is possible. So all your new relatives sprang into action and got you everything you needed. Grandma and Grandpa supplied a crib and diapers and footsie pajamas. Your aunts and uncles brought bottles and blankets. Your cousins gave you toys and a teddy. We stayed up all night reading books about how to take care of you. Now all we needed was you. On the day you came home, it was snowing in New York City. The flurries floated in the air, moving in every direction as if performing a special dance just for you. We didn't have a car, so we thought about hailing a taxi or hopping on a bus. But since you had entered our lives through a subway station, we chose to bring you home the same way. There they're going down to the subway train. And there they are riding on the train. We sat in the corner with you on our laps. We were so happy it was contagious. The other passengers all smiled at us. Soon the rocking and swaying made you sleepy. And I still remember how you looked at us and yawned and then closed your little eyes and took your first nap as our son. There we were, the three of us in a dream we hadn't dreamt, but came true anyway. Sometimes life hinges on little moments, happy accidents and miraculous surprises. Sometimes babies are born into forever families, and sometimes they're adopted. And sometimes all it takes to find your family is a chance glance at tiny toes wiggling in the corner of a subway station. So here's pictures of them when they found Kevin. There's Danny, and there's Pete. And here they are. Danny is 20 years later, and Kevin is over 6 feet tall. He's in college now, and there he is with his dads, Daddy Danny and Papa Pete. I hope you enjoyed that story. I love it so much. True stories are a thing, aren't they? So I'm gonna sing a little. Yip Harburg and Harold Arlen wrote Over the Rainbow for the Wizard of Oz movie in 1939. And for me, it's about hope and yearning and becoming and possibility. Sing it with me, I bet you know it. over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly, birds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh why can't I? If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh why can't I?
That might be the best song
I think
ever.
it is the best song ever.
So I invite us now into a time of quiet, into a spirit of meditation and prayer and stillness. Maybe this can be a time of settling, a time of opening, a time of breathing together, being together in this moment. So I will pause twice during our prayer, and if you are here with us on Sunday morning, I invite you to share in the chat first your sorrows or concerns or anything that weighs heavy on your heart so we can hold it with you. And the second invitation will be for your joys, your good news, your gratitude, so that it can be made bigger in the sharing. And if you're here with us at another time, I encourage you to name for yourself who and what you are holding and celebrating right now. So in the presence of this strong and tender community and in the shelter of this life-giving faith we share, let us reach out across time and distance and screens. And let us pray for all who are hurt in body or mind, for all who are sick, for all who are grieving, and for all who are in need of any kind. In this week of Earth Day, we pray for the health and protection of this beautiful planet and for all beings who live upon it. We pray for all who are still getting sick with COVID and for the ones who tend to them and take care of them. This week we pray for the family and the loved ones of George Floyd. There was accountability this week, so let us be thankful for that. But his life cannot be restored. So this is a beginning, not an ending. It is one small wave in what we pray will become a sea change. And may we have the strength and the will to keep working for true justice. These are the prayers of our congregation today. We hold Christina in love on the 6th anniversary of her beloved father's death. We continue to pray for Barbara's grandchild Freya in Costa Rica, who is sick with COVID. For Karen, who is home after surgery, for healing for her. For Steve B., for Irv's brother Tom, and for Wendy. And if the chat is available to you now, I invite you to share your sorrows or concerns with this gathered, loving people. Let us carry your sorrows with you. And we also celebrate together. We recognize joy and we give thanks for all that sustains us. Let us give thanks for the vaccine and each person able to receive it, for the people and places and moments that bring us comfort, for friendship and connection, for laughter, for all that is joyful. This week we celebrate with Wendy and Ray that their son Jonas was married in their yard. And we celebrate with Jackie Eric that they will be moving to independent living soon. This is a great joy and a big step on their journey. What are you feeling grateful for? What is sparking your delight today? I invite you to share it in the chat so we can rejoice with you and be grateful right alongside you. There is ample, spacious grace here for all that we hold. There is love here for each one of us and for all of the beautiful ways we are becoming. And where there is love, anything, everything is possible. So I'm so delighted to introduce Nathaniel Clark, who has a story of becoming to share with us this morning. For those who don't yet know Nate, he grew up in our congregation. He came of age here, he bridged here, and he is now, years later, off to the Iliff School of Theology in Denver, Colorado, to begin his path toward ordination as a Unitarian Universalist minister, to our great joy. His path to ministry actually began a long time ago, but this is the formal beginning. We at First Parish will become Nate's sponsoring congregation He is our second homegrown minister. Reverend Aaron Stockwell, who now serves First Parish in Framingham, is the first. So Lee asked Nate to speak today on the theme of unintentional becoming. Those times in our lives when circumstance led us in directions that we did not choose, but that ended up being incredibly important. Lee simply asked Nate, would you share a story from your life on that topic? And this is how Nate responded.
Good morning. I am Nathaniel Clark, and I have a story to tell. The story takes place when I was 17, so some important context for anyone who doesn't know me or hasn't known me for very long. When I was 17, I was a girl. I transitioned from female to male when I was about 21, so now I'm a man and I use he, him, his pronouns, but when I was 17, I was still pretty sure I was a girl, and everybody else around me was very sure I was a girl. And like many, many of the LGBT kids before me, I was heavily involved in theater and drama. And when I was 17, in my junior year, my school's fall play was a production of Macbeth. And I love Macbeth. And I got cast as Malcolm, the rightful King of Scotland. It's a great part. Basically, I get to take the throne back after Macbeth usurps me and becomes a tyrant. I get to win the play. It was great. And, you know, this being a high school theater production, a lot of girls had been cast in traditionally male parts. And my director's solution to this was just to flip around the pronouns and titles, but leave the names and parts the same. So our King Duncan was a Queen Duncan, and our Macduff was a Lady Macduff, and that was just how it was. So my Malcolm had been written as the rightful Queen of Scotland. And for reasons which would become very clear a couple years later, I didn't like the way they had changed the character of Malcolm. I felt that it was very important for the integrity of the story and my character that Malcolm ought to remain a boy. So I went to the director and explained this to him, and I offered that, you know, because I was an actor, I could pretend to be a man on stage while we were doing the play. And he said something like, okay, whatever. So I was in, and I got to be Malcolm, the King of the Scots, for a few months, and it was glorious. I got to wear a suit. It didn't fit right, but I loved it. And all the girls backstage figured out how to comb my hair, so my long hair kind of looked like it was short when it was in a ponytail. And everyone was calling me Lord and Sire the whole time. It was great. Especially because there was this girl in the play with me. My friend Laura was playing Lady Lennox, and I had the most wretched crush on Laura. It was terrible, because I was still a girl, and I had never liked a girl before, and I didn't think she liked girls, but she was so pretty. I was a mess. But you see, when I was Malcolm, everything was pretend, so I could strut around being a handsome prince in my suit and go talk to the prettiest girl ever, and she would laugh and curtsy, and, you know, we could just play pretend and everything was fine, and there was no reason to be nervous because it wasn't real. And when the last show came, we finished. It went very well, and then we fulfilled the ancient theater kid tradition of everyone goes to Denny's in costume at like 10 in the evening to eat 2,000 pancakes after the last show. By the way, I'm very sorry to anyone who has ever worked at a Denny's. You did nothing to deserve that. Anyway, so I had this last evening with all of my friends in costume, and I was still Malcolm. I was still the king, and I had my pancakes, and I had the prettiest girl in the whole wide world right next to me. And right before I left, in a fit of courage and chivalry, as I was saying goodbye to Laura, I took her hand and very, very gently got down on one knee and kissed her hand goodbye, as a lord would do to a lady. And she laughed at me and curtsied, and I ran away blushing. And that was it. That was the end of my career as a king. And Of course, about 8 years later, I was out for a walk in the woods with the exact same Laura. We were still friends. And I got down on one knee again, and I pulled out an engagement ring with her grandmother's diamond in it. And she said yes, and this time we weren't pretending. And now, this isn't a costume, and now she's my fiance, and none of it is pretend. And it turns out that maybe that whole time I wasn't actually pretending. Maybe that was actually practice.
Thank you so much, Nate. Thank you. So first, I hope you will take a second to press the like button on YouTube. I didn't think I would ever hear myself say that, but doing that does help people find us, and I totally want people to find us. If you're here on Sunday morning, we would love for you to come to coffee and conversation on the Zoom afterward. I make good coffee, so come on over. It starts after the postlude music, and we stay for about a half an hour, but you don't have to stay that long. The Zoom information will be on the screen. If you live nearby, you are always invited to our weekly Vigil for Black Lives today and every Sunday from 1 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Main Street along the Church Common. Our witness continues to be needed and important for us and for the community. So please join us. Practicing generosity is really important, not just for financial well-being of our congregation, but also for our own spiritual well-being. The goal for the Spring Ask fundraiser was $30,000, and we have surpassed it, which is so amazing and fabulous and heartening. Today is the very last Sunday for this fundraiser. All the money we raise will strengthen our financial health and will allow us to pay our fair share of dues to the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association. Ultimately, all the funds are really dedicated to sustaining the work of the church, which is to deepen spiritually, to take care of each other, and to be a blessing to the world. Donations in any amount can be made on the church website, uugroton.org. You will see the Spring Ask button on there. So grateful for your generosity. Thank you. Sometimes we know what we want to become or learn. We make plans and then we figure out the steps between here and there. And sometimes, in the middle of our regularly scheduled lives, we find that while we thought we were doing one thing, something unexpected was also happening. Maybe while playing the King of Scotland, you grow into your gender identity. Maybe while taking your cousin to the corner store, you end up confronted with slow-motion racist police brutality and record the video that changes the world. Maybe while walking through the subway station, you begin your journey of becoming a parent. For most of us, though, these unintentional becomings are far less dramatic, but no less important. Surprising circumstances in life shape who we become. We learn something about ourselves, and we use that to grow. When I was in my mid-20s, I was unexpectedly asked to go to the People's Republic of China to teach English for a couple years. I had always loved to travel. I had recently lived in Europe for a year, and I have an adventurous spirit, so I said yes right away, even though I would be leaving in 3 weeks, even though I did not know one single word of Chinese or anything at all about China. I did know a few things about teaching English as a second language, so I guess that was good. 1987 to 89, I was in Chengdu, Sichuan province, central southwest China, right next to Tibet. Chengdu in the late 80s was a big city where almost no one had ever met someone who was not Chinese before. So all 6 feet 1 inch of me was quite a spectacle, to put it mildly. At that time, it was about a decade after the end of something called the Cultural Revolution, led by Chairman Mao Zedong. The Cultural Revolution was a socio-political movement that was supposed to strengthen communism and get rid of anything that was capitalist or anything that was traditional Chinese. When I was there was still a huge statue of Chairman Mao in the very center of Chengdu. I rode my bike past it all the time, and I came up to about the toe of the statue. That's how big it was. Soon after I arrived, I was walking down a sidewalk in town, and I tripped and fell, and I kind of bounced my head off the concrete and got knocked out for a bit. And when I came to, I looked up, and I was completely surrounded by maroon robes and these bald Tibetan monks smiling down at me. They helped me up, and I realized that they were actually protecting me from huge crowds of Chinese folks who were gathering around. Because remember, just my presence, especially lying on the ground, was big news to lots of people. The monks ushered me into this little enclave between 2 buildings where they seemed to be living. And they fed me tea and just talked and laughed. They were so friendly. They tended to my head a little. We had not one word of language in common, but that didn't seem to matter much. I ended up going back to see them basically every afternoon from then on. In the mornings, I taught conversational English to scientists. My students were incredibly academically intelligent, high-level scholars. Most of them were in their 30s and 40s, some a little older. They started coming to visit me in the evenings, one by one. They were trying to teach me about Chinese history and culture because I knew nothing. Except I kept asking questions about their lives, which is what interested me. I came to realize that during the Cultural Revolution, it was really common for people to inform on each other, to turn each other over to authorities for doing or saying something elitist or contrary to the party line. My students told me they'd never been able to say what they really thought or felt to anyone. Fear of repercussions was really strong. But they figured out that the Chinese government actually had no control at all over me. So they opened up to me. Under Mao Zedong, they had lived through terrible things that many of us here would find unimaginable, honestly. Some had been involved themselves in something called the Red Guard, which was a paramilitary youth movement. Some of them had done really awful things, smashed up homes and religious sites, smashed up historic artifacts. They had publicly humiliated and injured, sometimes killed, teachers, intellectuals, doctors. That's what they were told to do. They were kids. And they had never, ever talked about it before. So as they opened up and talked and cried and laughed together, I didn't know what to say. I learned to listen. I clearly could not fix or make any of this any better. So I listened. I just felt really touched and honored that they trusted me. I just loved them and I just stayed with them. And over time, I heard them learn how to knit their narrative together, how to tell their own story in their own way. So it included the responsibility they had, but also the knowledge that at the time they were just kids doing what they were told to do. Over time, I watched them smile more and become more comfortable in their own bodies. I listened to their voices settle down. They were also getting better at English, which was my job after all. Meanwhile, I was going downtown every afternoon to hang out with my Tibetan monk friends, Jampa Tashi, Tenzin, and Karma. One day I showed up and they were all sitting on the ground, very still, with their eyes closed. So Jampa gets up and invites me to sit with them, and I'm like, what are we doing here, guys? And Jampa proceeds to teach me how to meditate entirely with gestures. So it's still the best meditation instructions I've ever gotten. And the time I spent with those guys, meditating or not, it just left me feeling incredibly content and joyful. I have no earthly idea what they were talking about. I have no idea why they were in Chengdu, what their histories were, what they had gone through, nothing. We laughed all the time. I generally had no idea if there was something funny or if life was just funny. I sure loved them, and I always felt like they were totally free to love me back. As I look back at that time, it was so challenging, and it was such a gift. I literally fell into a group of friends. I didn't set out to study Tibetan meditation techniques. I fell on the sidewalk and hit my head. And then I said yes. I said yes to tea, yes to the warm eyes, yes to the arms linked with mine. And 34 years later now, meditation and the clear, vivid memory of those beautiful humans keep me afloat every single day. I came into that situation with my students not intending to be the safe person they could confide in, but the circumstances set it up, and there it was. I had to learn how to listen, how to be with people and not fix anything. I may still be learning that one. Our becoming unfolds because we begin. I went to China as a teacher, and I slowly became a therapist. I worked as a therapist, and I slowly became a minister. None of it was intentional, but all of it required me to say yes. To say yes to the dream I hadn't dreamt, but that came true anyway. I'm sure many of you have stories of unintentional becomings in your lives. What's true about these stories is not only that they're unintentional, but also that everything happened before led us there, and that we chose to open the doors. We chose to live into our becoming. As Elea said last week, it's usually when we open the door and let in the strange angels who arrived uninvited that our becoming unfolds. Our becoming is in how we respond to the unexpected. Our responses create us. Sometimes the story of becoming is still unfolding, and we reach a moment where the circumstances make it clear that we actually have to consciously choose our path. I talked with a friend this week who is medically fragile. She always loved being with people, but spent the pandemic months alone at home. Now she's vaccinated, and her doctor says it's safe to be with people again. But as she cracks those doors open and peeks out, she's finding that she's scared. She has unintentionally become afraid of other people. We can just as easily unintentionally become what we do not love and what we do not want to be. So now my friend has to decide how to respond. Does she leave the door closed? Can she find ways to slow the process down enough to move into and through her grief and her fear and to emerge into the light? Our becoming is forever unfolding as we move forward through time. We are created not by what happens to us, but by how we respond, by the story we tell about what happens to us. We become the characters in our stories. Richard Rohr, who is an American spiritual writer and Franciscan friar, talks about how our image of God creates us. I wonder if maybe God is the wind whispering in our ear every day. This way, beloved, this way, toward more love, toward more compassion. We may think we're doing one thing and we're becoming something else too. That something else may be unintentional, yet we get to choose how we respond. We get to write our own story and become those characters. So I'm going to invite the other half of the singing ministers back.
You've got singing ministers now. Our closing song is The Tide is Rising by Rabbi Shoshana Friedman and Yotan Schachter. It is super simple, and I hope that you will sing it along with us.
We got this, right?
Yeah, we got this.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The task is mighty, and so are we. The task is mighty, and so are we. The task is mighty, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The storm is raging, and so are we. The storm is raging, and so are we. The storm is raging, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The sun is shining, and so are we. The sun is shining, and so are we. The sun is shining, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called called to be. The world is ready, and so are we. The world is ready, and so are we. The world is ready, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be.
Nice. So will you come on over to Zoom after the postlude music for coffee and conversation? The Zoom link will be on the screen, and Lee and I will both be there to greet you. There will be several other small rooms where we can be with each other and talk. But for now, will you put one hand on your heart? With the other, will you reach out? Know that we are connected by strong, strong threads of love.
Go in peace, my friends. Be a blessing to this world.
Amen.